Hey, good people. Garrett and Jamie here to review offense and special teams. And Jamie just told me that I blew it on that tweet I sent out. I said defense and special teams. Offense and special teams today. We'll talk about camp battles and all the good stuff. Jamie, how you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. How about you?
Good. I'm good. First off, before we get right into it, because we're going to go like special teams and just like get that out of the way first, and then we'll go into the offense and the camp battles. But for those of you that don't know, Jamie and I are going to be at camp on August 7th. It's on a weekend, so Jamie and I will be there. We hope that you will too. We're going to be in the stands, so come and say hi, come and join us. And then right afterwards, we're going to do our first little meetup. It's going to be at the Original Pizza Sports Bar and Grill. And if you guys can't make it to practice, come join us after, have some pizza, some drinks, and whatever else. Come and join us because we're going to have our first little meetup, and it could just be me, Jamie, and one other person, and that's just fine. But we're gonna have a good time regardless. So come and join us on August 7th. And that's really it. We're just gonna be there to have fun. Nothing real big involved, but we'll be there.
Yep. We'll check out the scrimmage beforehand and talk some football and drink some beer, or most of us will be drinking beer. I won't.
Yeah, you won't.
And eating pizza. Mm-hmm. So come have some fun with us.
Yes. All right. So first off, I'm not going to pronounce his name. Jamie, you're good with names. All the way from New Zealand.
Sal.
Yeah, Sal's a good one. Sal F. I like it. All right. Well, thank you for joining us all the way from New Zealand. Craig, of course, always on deck, the flight deck. Good to see you here, Craig, and everybody else. And so let's just get right into it, Jamie, and let's talk special teams because we just want to get this one out of the way. So it's going to be real easy because the punter and long snapper, there's only one. It is Josh Harris and J.K. Scott, the Pro Bowler. So they are in. And then for kicker, the Chargers just signed Dustin Hopkins to a 3-year, $9 million deal. And then they brought in James McCourt, who's there to maybe push him a little bit, maybe help collect some footballs in practice. But 2 kickers in camp.
2 kickers, and only one's going to make it, and it's going to be Dustin Hopkins. So it seems like long snapper settled, punter settled, and kicker settled. Can we move on?
Yep, we're done. Nathan says we got put the important stuff up front, like Nathan says. Get important stuff up first with special teams. We got it. We're done. You guys can log off now. Thanks for joining us. We did special teams. So let's move our way down and let's talk about quarterbacks. And I'll put up a little sheet here, Jamie, while you start talking. I got players listed up that I put together like a couple minutes before we got on stream here. So here's our little guide here for QB and everybody else.
So the Chargers have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. We've got obviously the starter, Justin Herbert. Then we have Chase Daniel, Easton Stick, and UDFA Brandon Peters from Illinois, all competing for at least 1, hopefully not 2 spots, possibly a practice squad spot. We go on this show every year. We say that we think they should only carry 2 quarterbacks. Inevitably, they always carry 3.
Yep. Every time.
Piss us off.
Yep.
But every time they go with 3. So I'll start pounding the task right now. I want 2 quarterbacks.
Yes.
If it's going to be 2 quarterbacks, you got to think it's going to be Herbert and Daniel. Otherwise, they wouldn't have re-signed Chase Daniel in the offseason, more than likely. I know there are a lot of people out there who have a crush, for lack of a better word, on Easton Stick. Don't get it. No. Haven't seen much from him in his first 4 years on the team. I think he's played in 1 game in 4 years. He's been pretty erratic in the preseason. I've heard talk that the team wants to maintain continuity at the quarterback position. And I get that with the first 2 spots. Not really sure the value of continuity at the QB3 spot, who hopefully is never going to play anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried about that. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to what does one guy offer over the other. And I think you go with Chase Daniel's experience at backup quarterback. He's a guy who's obviously developed a good relationship with Justin Herbert. And now they're going into year 2 in the same offense. which should help. And obviously, Chase Daniel has experience in this Saints offense as well, so he has that advantage. As for Easton Stick, I know people want to be Taysom Hill. He's not Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill didn't even turn out to be Taysom Hill that everybody wanted.
Maybe he is Taysom Hill after all.
Maybe that is right. Yeah. Maybe everybody was right, Jamie.
This coaching staff didn't draft Taysom Hill. The coaching staff didn't draft Easton Stick. They're one and the same. They're synonymous. I can't separate them. They didn't draft Easton Stick. There was talk last year that he might win the backup quarterback job. He didn't. Seems like they're not too keen on him winning the backup quarterback job based on the fact that they brought Chase Daniel back. So ideally, let's keep 2, move on, maybe keep Stick on the practice squad. I can't imagine they'd have a hard time stashing him on the practice squad if it came down to that. I don't know if you watched Brandon Peters at all. I watched a little bit of him. I think I saw him throw maybe 10 passes in 3 games. Did not play very much. He's a little bigger than Stick, a little stronger armed, not the athlete, not as mobile as Stick is. Not a whole lot to get excited about with Peters, other than maybe some physical traits that they like and they think they can develop. And if you're going to keep a developmental, potential backup quarterback, do you keep somebody who has better physical traits, is a little bigger, a little stronger armed, or do you keep the plucky little guy that everybody wants to root for? I guess that's up to the coaches at the end of the day. Have a hard time seeing Peters Stick. He looks like a camp arm to me just based on what I saw. So, go with 2, go with Herbert and Daniel and move on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So, of course, up top is Justin Herbert, who is the savior and the starting quarterback. The real question is if they keep 3 quarterbacks like Jamie's talking about. Is it going to be Chase Daniel? Will they keep Easton Stick as a third? I think the whole Easton Stick experiment has just run its course. They kept 3 quarterbacks last year and the year before that, and every year that basically Easton Stick's been on the roster. And we talked about on the last show that there's going to be a lot of kind of fringe defensive players here when you're talking about like linebacker, edge, a lot of these DBs, safety corner group, where they're going to have to make up some roster spots of that 53 somewhere, and taking up an extra spot here for a third quarterback who, let's face it, is going to be inactive every week. Does not help your cause, does not help your team, and isn't going to help your team in the long run because there's just nothing really there with Easton Stick anymore. We've all seen it. The veteran Chase Daniel is a good bet to probably win that QB2 spot. And, the question is now, do they want to keep 3 quarterbacks? Jamie and I have said for years, no, and hopefully they don't. And hopefully with some of these talented other players on defense and maybe some of these other positions here on offense, they keep an extra guy on one of those that, could be a depth piece later on in the year. God forbid there's injuries, then a third quarterback. And if Justin Herbert and Chase Daniel goes down, you might as well just sign somebody off the street. Your season's over. And I don't care if it's Easton Stick or some kid who was just working at CarMax. Get somebody in there, lose those games out, get the draft spot at that point.
Come on,
well, I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with CarMax. I'm just saying there are quarterbacks that should be working at a CarMax, and Easton Stick might be there very soon. And then in terms of the fourth quarterback, Brandon Peters, who at Illinois started in Michigan before that. There's a lot of snaps in the stat sheet. I didn't see a lot of it. What I saw with the limited sample size that we got was pretty good pocket presence. But he's got a absolute pea shooter for an arm. He stresses and pushes every throw. It felt like, I feel like he's going to be the third and fourth string DB's favorite quarterback when he's in, and they're going to hang him out to dry. He's a camp arm at best going in here. I don't think he even really has a shot at practice squad. I think, like Jamie mentioned, it probably would be Easton Stick if they're going to go a third quarterback to keep on the practice squad. But, they've got another arm in camp. They got to have somebody play quarterback. So they've got 4 quarterbacks there, Herbert, Daniel, Stick, and Peters. Hopefully they leave with 2 in the 53 being Herbert and Daniel. So then moving on to the fullbacks, there's just two names. It's Gabe Neighbors, who's been the team's fullback for the Chargers, but they drafted Xander Horvath in the 7th. Horvath was a running back for the Boilermakers. He's going to be a fullback for the Chargers. He might get some work at H-back, but he's going to need to make some plays on special teams. That's what's really going to solidify him here in a spot over Neighbors on the 53. And we'll talk about running backs in a little bit, but kind of some versatility here with Neighbors at a fullback / running back. So we'll see if they how many running backs they keep. But this is going to be a kind of a tight match here with Neighbors and Horvath in camp.
Yeah, it's an offense that I don't think uses the fullback all that much. Occasionally, but not as much as we've seen in past years. And Horvath isn't really a fullback. He's kind of that H-back hybrid, halfback, fullback kind of guy. Catches the ball a little bit. He tested pretty well for a guy his size, but he isn't overly twitchy or explosive. There were a lot of comparisons to him with Mike Allstott when he was picked by the Chargers. They both went to Purdue. They're both white. They both wore number 40. I think that's kind of where the comparisons stop. I think you said it. Whoever wins this job is going to have to stand out on special teams. Neighbors made the team last year primarily because of his special teams prowess. I don't necessarily know that he still offers that kind of value on special teams. He was kind of on and off the field at times last year.
Yeah.
He catches the ball pretty well. He's a decent blocker. They used him in some short yardage situations, he being, of course, Neighbors. And he was okay, but he never really did much to stand out. He had a hard time getting and staying on the field. And I think that position's wide open, and it's kind of a throwaway position, to be honest. Somebody's going to win that job, and they're going to win it based on their special teams play. It could be Neighbors just because he's been here longer, but they seem to be shifting away from that, that practice of handing roles to veterans just because they've been around longer. So, wouldn't surprise me to see them go with the recent draft pick and see what they can get out of him on special teams and maybe design some special plays for him on offense in certain situations.
Yeah. So it got a comment here about Jamie being quiet. Let us know if he is quiet. We'll turn up the gain on his mic. But from LJ Carter, does Neighbors' friendship with Herbie make a difference in selection? No, right?
It shouldn't.
I mean, it's great. I'm glad they're so close and they're able to cook brisket together and all that. But no, that doesn't matter when it comes to the football field. So no, I don't think so. All right, so let's move on to running backs here, Jamie. And there are 6 here: Austin Eckler, Isaiah Spiller, Joshua Kelly, Larry Roundtree, and 2 UDFAs, Letty Brown and Kevin Marks Jr.
I see 4. There's like 2 blank spaces right below Spiller and above Letty Brown. Maybe my screen looks different.
Oh,
different?
It says Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree, but yes, you are right.
Oh, that's where they are? Okay, I wasn't seeing them at first. Maybe it's just my computer screen. I don't know. I think this is one of those areas where there's going to be a pretty heated camp battle. Obviously, we know Eckler is going to be the RB1 going into camp. I think Spiller, they obviously took Spiller with high expectations for him. He's a guy who could eat into some of Austin Eckler's carries if he performs well. The team has obviously been searching for a reliable RB2 and even a reliable RB3, basically since Brandon Staley and his coaching staff got here. And that search continues. I think they found it in Spiller, but it doesn't sound like they're going to hand him the job. So you're going to have Roundtree, you're going to have Kelly, you're going to have Spiller battling it out for that RB2 spot. Obviously, Spiller's a recent 4th-round pick. With his skill set as a blocker, as a pass protector, as a receiver, as an effective runner out of the backfield, you would expect him to win that RB2 spot. He's certainly going to make the team as a recent 4th-round pick.
Yeah.
And they may start him out slow and ease him in, but I would expect by midseason, he's going to be that RB2 just based on what he put on tape in college, and based on the slop that he's competing with in camp. And then you look at you look at Kelly, you look at Roundtree. Kelly's a guy who's entering year 3 with the Chargers. He's done next to nothing to keep his spot on the roster. He was awful last year. He's proven himself to be a terrible pass protector, not very effective as a receiver, has not shown very good vision, has not protected the football very well, and has not offered much on special teams. And these are all things that any backup running back, whether it's RB2, 3, 4, whatever, has to be able to do. So, with me, I think Kelly's probably the first one on the chopping block, just because the coaching staff, they draft this current coaching staff, they drafted Larry Roundtree.
Mhm.
And even though he didn't play particularly well last year, he's their guy.
Yeah.
Or at least he was. So you would expect that he's got the inside track on earning one of those spots. I guess the question is, how many backs are they going to carry? And this is another one of those spots, kind of like quarterback, where it seems like they always carry one more guy than they probably should. With quarterback, we always get 3. It seems like with running back, we're probably headed towards carrying 4. But hopefully, with Justin Jackson not being on the team anymore and not having to worry about him getting hurt every couple of games, and Spiller being more durable and not having as much mileage on him, hopefully they won't need to carry 4, because they'll feel more secure with the top 2 guys on the roster, and it will lessen the need to carry a 4th. And I think last year, part of the reason they carried 4 was because of COVID. And I think part of the reason they carried 4 was because they just didn't have anything behind Austin Eckler, and nobody stood out enough in camp to earn a spot. So they just carried everybody and hoped somebody would step up. And I think one of the bigger storylines in camp on the offensive side of the football is going to be that RB2 competition. And as that spills over into RB3, because there is more talent there now, and because they are challenging guys to step up and earn those snaps behind Eckler. And I'm sure after watching them, draft Spiller and seeing kind of, watching his film and thinking and trying to think about how they'll use him, I feel like there's probably a plan for him to have a larger role than the typical running back 2 in this offense, so they can free up Eckler as more of a slot receiver and use him as more of a matchup weapon all over the field. So they're looking for that to happen. And if that happens and Spiller shows he can do that in camp, then the need to carry 4 is lessened drastically. And then you talk about guys like Kevin Marks Jr. and Letty Brown. I think if you were going to watch out for either one of those guys, and I'm not sure either one of them has a real shot at making the roster. Hopefully they only carry 3, which would lessen their shot at making the roster. I think you'd watch out for Letty Brown, more so than Kevin Marks. Marks kind of looks shot. He played 5 years in college, was banged up a lot his senior year, lost his job to a freshman or sophomore running back, and really struggled to get back on the field. Not a lot of snaps last year for him, but he had a lot of wear and tear leading up to his senior year. Brown's a little different. Brown has quick feet, good one-cut downhill runner, shows good vision. If there's a hole, he's probably going to find it, catches the ball pretty well. And because he played in that air raid offense in West Virginia, he has a lot of practice in pass protection. Technique isn't great, but the willingness is there. He's willing to step up and hit people. And if that's there, then you can teach a guy how to block. So I think he's a guy who might catch on the practice squad. And who knows, maybe if Kelly and Roundtree both stink up the joint, maybe he sneaks up into RB3. He looks like a kind of a fitting RB3. He's kind of a bruiser, downhill runner, knows when to get his nose dirty, not afraid to take on contact, runs behind his pads really well. I wouldn't call him a power runner, but he's got decent balance and he's somewhat powerful. You're just not going to look for him to outrun anybody or juke anybody in the open field very often.
I'm glad we're talking about Letty Brown, because last year when we were going through these UDFAs, we're talking about Amen Agbangamiga last year, and just like, this kid can play and he might be able to sneak onto this linebacker group. And though this is a crowded running back group, Letty Brown is definitely a guy to watch in camp. He had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons at West Virginia, 13 touchdowns a year ago. He was starting to peak this past year. Little wiggle, runs with power, like Jamie mentioned. It's a one-cut-and-go type runner, has little wasted movement at the line of scrimmage, and can really run through arm tackles. So I'm very interested to see Letty Brown in camp and in preseason, a guy maybe not close to making the 53, but again, I mean, Kelly and Roundtree are not knowns right now. They seem, if they play as bad as they have, there might be a guy here in Letty Brown that could leapfrog them. And I think probably has a pretty good shot at making the practice squad just because there's a lot there in college. And yeah, like you mentioned with Kevin Marks, aka Smoke, kind of more of a shiftier back than Brown, but yeah, he really fell off towards the end of his college career. He had 1,000 yards in 19, averaged over 100 yards a game in 2020, and then lost his job. And then now he's a UDFA. He did his best work with volume touches at Buffalo, and he's not going to get those volume touches in camp. So he's going to make the best of the opportunities that he gets in camp. And I would give the leg up to Letty Brown right now, making the practice squad going into camp, being the slight favorite right now. But yeah, so as you mentioned with the starters, Eckler RB1, beautiful compliment in Isaiah Spiller in the 4th round. We talked about it in the draft show. I think while we kind of were a little rough on Isaiah Spiller, it was only because everybody had him as an RB1. As a high-end RB2, it is the perfect situation for a runner like Isaiah Spiller. And I actually agree with Jamie. I think he's going to have an extended role where it's going to be not so much split carries as a RB1A and B, but I think they're going to be pretty close in carries, and Spiller's going to get a lot of more carries. We're going to see Eckler out wide in a bigger receiving role this year. So in terms of Kelly and Roundtree, I mean, they were both not enough support as RB2s last year. They both were healthy scratches throughout last season. The Chargers kept 4 last year. Without Justin Jackson and Isaiah Spiller taking that space, it could be those 4 again. But, you know, I think even if Roundtree is bad again this year, they drafted him just a year ago in the 6th round. And though 6th round doesn't cement you a roster spot, that's still a pretty quick hook for a guy you drafted just a year ago. So, you know, I don't know that Roundtree could be the odd man out. He could, but I would say he might have a leg up here on Kelly, who was drafted 2 rounds higher a year earlier and wasn't drafted by this coaching staff like Jamie mentioned. So neither have really proven anything yet. And we'll kind of see how it goes with both these guys fighting for an RB3 role going into camp. But, you know, they kept 4 running backs and 1 fullback last year. With Xander Horvath, depending on how they see him and his type of role, he's kind of that, he's gonna be listed as a fullback, but he's kind of that H-back. If you really wanted a power runner, goal line guy, somebody who hopefully can pitch even on special teams, which I think he can, you might think about keeping 3 running backs and 1 fullback, knowing that you got Xander Horvath who can take some carries. Or does he take some, well, you don't want to carry 2 running backs, but you know, he could probably take one of those 4th running back spots and slip in there and be a fullback, kind of a guy who's versatile in that area, and cut maybe one of these Roundtrees or Kellys. So it'll be interesting to see how they do towards the end of this running back depth chart going into RB3, RB4 here.
Yeah, I think the real interesting thing is, you know, talking about competition at running back, you keep hearing Austin Eckler talk about how he needs somebody to step up and be able to spell him without losing too much on the field. And he's flat out directly, verbally, openly challenging Roundtree and Kelly to step up and earn their roster spot and show that they belong. And that seems to be a recurring theme with some of these guys. You know, we talked about how Brandon Staley talked about Jerry Tillery having to earn his spot on the team. We talked about Michael Davis now being in a position where he has to earn his spot on the team. Same thing, very much so with Kelly and Roundtree. Both those guys are in a position where they have to show that they belong and they have to earn their spot on the roster. And that's a good thing because that means there's depth. That means there's competition. And that means they're not in a position where they're having to hand out roster spots because there's nothing else to pick from, which is a spot they've been in for a long time now.
Yeah.
So that's encouraging because it shows that they realize some of the flaws in how they've been building the roster, they being the Chargers, and they are trying to address those and create competition and force guys to really fight for their NFL lives. And that's what this is supposed to be about. So it's encouraging to see that. I see our buddy Sal over here comparing Letty Brown to Brandon Oliver. Oh, we can go with that one first.
No, go ahead.
I'm not sure I would compare Letty Brown, and it's Letty, by the way, not Lenny. I'm not sure I would compare Letty Brown to Brandon Oliver. Oliver was shiftier, a little twitchier, a little bit more explosive. Brown is much more straight downhill, like I said, not really a power back, but he runs with a little bit more power, one cut and go kind of a guy. He's not going to make a whole lot of people miss, although he will run through the initial tackle more often than not. But interesting comparison. Not sure I'd go there with that. I think they're very different players, but just thought that was interesting.
Lenny, the English version of Letty Brown. So Sal also asks, are we worried that it seems like the Chargers are going to be more focused on running the ball more and taking the ball away from Herbert, or do you see that as a benefit?
I'm not sure that they're going to be more focused on running the ball. I think the ball is still going to be in Herbert's hands. I think they are more focused on running the ball when they need to run the ball, which is something that we talked about going into last season. It was kind of a recurring theme throughout the year. Several of their wins, they were able to close out with 6-8 minutes on the clock because they had the football late and they were able to run it. And I think, running the ball on short yardage, running the ball on goal to gain, running the ball on fourth down or in the fourth quarter, I should say. I think those are situations where you need to be able to run the ball if you're going to be a good football team. And I think those are the things they're focused on. And I think they're focused on running the ball differently than the way they've run it in the past. I think they're trying to find ways to unlock Eckler in much the same way that they've been trying to find ways to unlock Derwin James on defense. And I think they're trying to find ways to utilize Eckler's yard after catch ability and his twitch in space as a slot receiver, maybe even as a receiver out wide, as opposed to strictly running the ball to him and using him as a dump off. I think that we're going to see an expansion of his role in the passing game. And in order to do that, you need to have somebody who can run the ball. And I think Spiller gives him the ability to run the ball with intent, I guess you could say, and run the ball down people's throats and be more physical. And you can't win in the NFL if you can't win the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So I think that's what they're going for, is they're trying to win on both sides, trying to stop the run and be able to run when they need to. So I'm not worried about them taking the ball out of Herbert's hands. I just think it's a recognition that there are times when they have to run the ball and they need to get better at that.
Yeah, they have to run with purpose. And I think with Herbert being in the second year of this new offensive system, I don't think that they're going to take the ball out of his hands at all. If anything, probably going to put a lot more on Herbert's plate. And I don't think drafting Spiller means that they're going to be a run-first offense. I just think, like Jamie has been talking about, they're going to be running with purpose when they need to. And a lot of last year they couldn't, because Eckler just didn't have the gas because nobody else behind him was helping him out much at all last season. So next up here, let's talk about tight ends. Oh, first of all, Junius asking about Eckler on 3rd and 4th and short. Do you think he's big enough to get those yards? I mean, he's shown he has.
I think he's shown that he has the ability to get the ball on 3rd and 4th and short. I'm not sure that's necessarily the highest and best use of him, but I think he can do it. And I think that's why they've been harping on, finding that RB2 who can come in and even be on the field with him at the same time, so they could use Spiller and Eckler together. I just think it's opening up another section of the playbook. The offense is evolving. The way they're looking at the running game and the passing game is evolving. And I think that's always a good thing, because they're going to have to make some changes.
Mm-hmm. And LJ here saying can't pass effectively when you can't run. And ain't that the truth? All right, so moving on to tight ends. It's Gerald Everett, Donald Parham, Trey McKinney, Hunter Kampmoyer, Stone Smart, and Eric Croman-Hoke. And we'll go ahead and get into these now. And so we know Gerald Everett was acquired this offseason to replace Jared Cook as the tight end 1. The best news in my mind of this offseason is Donald Parham is cleared and healthy, and hopefully he is ready for an expanded role here in 2022. Trey McKinney got a lot more work on offense as the season went on last year. He's going in as the tight end 3. Kampmoyer was a practice squad player last year. He was active for the last game of the season, just taking some special team snaps there. And then behind those 4 tight ends, it's 2 UDFAs. Stone Smart, great name, by the way, former quarterback at Old Dominion, who went the JUCO route, converted to wide receiver this past season, will now line up at tight end for the Chargers. So Smart is a good athlete, but obviously raw as a receiver, who is now learning to play tight end, kind of hoping to bank on that athletic upside with that one. And the other UEFA Eric Croman Ho-Oak. Big blocking tight end at USC. Physical player, pretty good frame, okay hands, but not a very good athlete and an average route runner. So the Chargers carried 4 tight ends last season with Steven Anderson signing with the Cardinals. There could be an open spot here at tight end if they want to elect to carry 4 again this year. They might just roll with 3 with Everett, Parham, and McKinney. But looks like Camp Moyer, who's got some experience with the system, might be fighting for a tight end 4 here, role in camp.
So this is another one of those spots where I think you can carry too many people. We talked about hopefully not carrying 4 running backs, hopefully not carrying 3 quarterbacks. I think tight end, last year they carried 4 tight ends mainly because they wanted to ease Trey McKinney into the system and take their time getting him on the field. My guess is his role is going to be at least a little bit, if not much larger than it was last year. He was basically like an extra offensive tackle for the most part last year, and they started easing him into the short passing game. I think they will probably expand his role as a receiver this year. So if you're looking at how many tight ends they're going to carry, they should carry, obviously Everett's going to make the team, Parham's going to make the team, and McKinney's going to make the team. I'm not sure there's a need for a 4th. Maybe you carry a couple extra guys on the practice squad. I do know Stone Smart has been impressing people in mandatory camps. He has been making plays in the red zone. He's a big frame. I think he's 6'4", 230, something like that. Uber athletic, obviously just learning the position, but all the quarterbacks seem to like throwing to him in the red zone. So that's a guy who I could see sneaking onto the practice squad. And maybe if you're looking to carry a 4th developmental guy and script some particular plays for somebody, maybe he's somebody that you carry as a 4th and sneak on occasion to see when you can. But I'm not sure there's a need for four tight ends at this point, unless you're just really nervous about Donald Parham staying healthy and you want an extra body.
Yeah. I hope they carry 3. This is like quarterbacks where I only want them to carry 2. Everett, Parham, McKinney, and then if you like Smart or you like how Camp Moyer did in camp, I would much rather them on the practice squad and roll with 3 tight ends, because we'll see how it goes in camp, but I just don't know if there's a guy worth keeping here. But of course, we haven't seen him play yet in preseason. So let's go ahead and move on, Jamie, here. Let's talk about wide receivers. It is Keenan Allen. Do you want to add something?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Joshua Palmer, Jalen Guyton, DeAndre Carter, Joe Reed, Jason Moore, Michael Bandy, Maurice French, that's not a typo, 2 Fs, and UDFA Travon Bradford.
So this is a spot where you'd ideally like to take a roster spot from either quarterback or running back and hopefully carry 6 receivers, just because I think they're going to need the depth. They're still developing Guyton and Palmer behind Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and there's really no telling what you're going to get from somebody if a Williams or an Allen is not available. We still don't know what we have in terms of taking more snaps and making plays when Allen and Williams aren't on the field. We still don't know what we have from Palmer and from Guyton. So obviously we know, last year they carried 5. They generally carried 5. I would like to see them carry 6. And if they're going to carry 6, you want somebody who offers something that you don't have already. Somebody who gives you an opportunity to make some plays in the short passing game and maybe turn those short passes into a bigger play. And I didn't think I would see this in this player when I watched him, but the one guy who stands out to me right now is Travon Bradford out of Oregon State.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not sure that so here's the thing, is he's not twitchy. I would not call Travon Bradford twitchy. I wouldn't call him.
He ran a 4.5. Yeah.
Overly explosive. But he played 6 years in college. The kid knows how to get open. He runs a very complete and diverse route tree. And he is able to find openings in the field. He knows when he's open. He knows how to find his way open, and he's really good with the ball in his hands after he catches the ball. All I saw from him is when they throw to him on third down, when Oregon State threw to him on third down, he was almost a lock to catch the ball and stretch it into a big play. They'd throw it to him underneath. He'd turn a 4-yard catch into a 15-yard gain. He'd turn a 12-yard catch into a 25-plus yard gain. He was making plays in the short area of the field, intermediate, and deep. He's not going to win a lot of jump balls because he's a little on the small side. He's only 6 foot 184, but he's just smooth and he's savvy as a route runner, and he's good in the open field once he gets the ball in his hands. So he's a guy who could give them some yards after catch ability at the wide receiver position. He also has some kick and punt return experience in college.
Yep.
And I know they signed DeAndre Carter
Yep.
to return kicks and punts, but maybe you have Carter return kicks and you have Bradford return punts. Bradford's a guy that I would watch. I think he's very much on the outside looking in right now. They will probably only carry 5 receivers, but if they carry 6, I would keep an eye on Bradford. If he stands out on special teams, maybe he shows he can be a gunner. Maybe he shows he can return punts or kicks at this level. I think it gives them an opportunity to, find some value out of somebody at the bottom of the roster.
Mm-hmm. I like what you're saying. I don't agree with it, but I like what you're saying because it would really take a pretty big jump here for him to make this team. But yeah, I mean, because Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, you've got Joshua Palmer, who's definitely there. You got the self-proclaimed Dennis Rodman of the Chargers offense, Jalen Guyton, who's back again. They signed DeAndre Carter, who's definitely going to make it as the return specialist and a borderline starter at that. And then you've got 3 guys who have been on the practice squad, which feels like an eternity, in Joe Reed, Jason Moore, and Michael Bandy. Bandy not so much, but Moore and Reed I feel like have been here for 12 years, but they haven't. But then they're bringing back a guy they brought in last season, Maurice French, with 2 Fs, of course, who they signed last September after the Chiefs released him, and he played in 3 games. So then he was on the practice squad for most of last year. So that's like 4 guys in Reed, Moore, Bandy, and French who have all been practice squad players that had at least some kind of NFL experience, if at least a practice squad spot in the NFL. And then for Travon Bradford, who, has a little bit above average speed, good hands. I really do like his ability to break tackles like Jamie was talking about, has the return experience. I just don't know that he's got enough to leapfrog all these other guys with the experience that they have, but I could definitely see him sticking on a practice squad for sure. I think there is something there and definitely a guy to watch, but that'd be an interesting thing to watch because they kept 5 last year. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Joshua Palmer, Jalen Guyton, DeAndre Carter is your 5. So it's kind of going to be these last chance for Jason Moore, Joe Reed to make the roster here. And I know Craig's probably heartbroken that you picked Bradford over his boy, Joe Reed, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see that bottom after those 5, how those guys do in camp.
Yeah, I think Reed's got a lot to prove, and that's why I think he's on the outside looking in. I think Reed's a guy who has a lot to prove in terms of just being able to run routes and be an effective wide receiver. I think they were hoping he'd be a kick or punt returner when they drafted him. He hasn't shown the ability to stay healthy to do that, and they haven't figured out how to get him on the field as an offensive weapon. So will they use him in that kind of wide back role that Deebo Samuel plays in? Who knows? It sounds fun, but it doesn't seem like it's the path they're going to go. Sorry, Craig.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that's where this is headed.
We definitely just pissed on his parade, as he said.
And the rest of those guys, with the exception of Bandy, the rest of those guys they're not guys who were brought on by Staley. Like you mentioned, Moore's been here, I think, for 3 years, at least. It
feels like forever.
Yeah. Although he did step up and he made some plays when they needed him to. I forget which game it was last year, but he made some plays for him.
Sure. Yeah.
I guess it's just a matter of what they want out of that 6th spot, and will that person be able to contribute on special teams? So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But that's somebody I'm going to keep my eye on just because he has that return ability. He's really good with the ball in his hands. He's kind of a gadget guy, ran a lot of, reverses and jet sweeps and things like that in college. And for whatever reason, he was up and down the depth chart at Oregon State. One year it seemed like he was wide receiver 3. The next year he was wide receiver 5. Then he's wide receiver 2. Then he's wide receiver 4. And last year in his super senior season, he was basically their go-to guy on third down and in the red zone. When they needed to play, they went to him, and he was almost always open. And if he's open, he's going to catch it. So some good things to see from him.
All right. So Junius wants to know, are we sold on Guyton? We kind of talked about Guyton, but as the unknown, over under on touchdowns, 7.
I'm going to say under.
I'm going under.
I'm not a big believer in Guyton. And I think it's very likely, just based on the way they like to use their wide receivers and the way the offense runs, I think you're going to start to see Joshua Palmer start to take some of his snaps and eat into some of his snaps. And he's going to be, kind of that one trick pony of either he's catching the deep ball for a touchdown or he's not doing a whole lot. So I'm not a big believer in Guyton. Hopefully he proves me wrong. I know people love the speed, just not a fan of the hands or the route running. And I don't know, not really convinced that he's anything more than a wide receiver 3 or 4.
Yeah. And to be honest, as soon as they signed DeAndre Carter, I felt like Carter does everything Guyton does, but better. And he's a returner. He's much faster, plays better. The hands have been somewhat inconsistent for both of them, really. But Carter was a guy who flashed a lot last year, and it was a big signing for them. And I think, quite honestly, towards the end of the year, he could be near wide receiver 5 if everything shakes out and everybody's healthy. Because I think Joshua Palmer ends up leapfrogging Jalen Guyton here towards the beginning of the year. And I think DeAndre Carter, as the season goes on, you just can't replace that speed. A guy that you can play as a gadget player and a guy that can definitely take some of those end arounds that Jalen Guyton was kind of running to the sideline last year and do something with it. So quite honestly, I think DeAndre Carter is a better version of Jalen Guyton than Jalen Guyton is. So I'm not a huge believer in him yet. And I would say under 7 touchdowns for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, Guyton's a guy who just struck me last year as a guy who just didn't want to get hit. Not quite Travis Benjamin levels, but there were times last year where it just looked like he was not interested in getting hit at all.
Yeah.
So not a big fan, not very tough at the catch point, but kind of a limited route runner. And somebody said it here, he really struggles to get off the press, which is interesting because they've had
Thomas.
They've had him playing gunner in mandatory mini camps, trying to help him learn how to get off the press. So it's interesting to see them use that as a technique for teaching him how to beat the press.
All right. Okay. So, sorry. All right. Let's go into offensive line here, Jamie, our last group for the night. And it's a big one. Rashawn Slater, Matt Filer, Corey Lindsley, the rookie Zion Johnson, Trey Pipkin, last year's right tackle Storm Norton, Brennan Hymus, the draftee Jamari Salier, Will Clapp, that type is too small, Foster Sorrell, Ryan Hunter, Zach Bailey, Andrew Trainer, and Isaac Weaver.
So this is a group, for once, it seems like for the first time in, I don't know, a decade, where it feels like this whole group is pretty much decided heading into camp. Like you have a pretty good feel for who is going to make this group, who is going to start. There's still one spot on the starting offensive line that really concerns me. And I know some people are excited for him because they think he showed a lot in his 160 snaps or whatever it was last year, 180 snaps. I'm still not a big believer in Trey Pipkins just because I haven't seen it with my own eyes. He played well in limited snaps last year, but he was playing against very limited defensive lines with basically game plans that were tailored to his strengths to keep him from getting beat. So remains to be seen what things look like at right tackle. But other than that, 4 out of the 5 starting offensive linemen seem like they're going to be very good this year. It seems like it's a group that has a chance to be maybe top 10 in the NFL in terms of pass protection and run blocking, which is extremely encouraging. You've got obviously Slater, who had, borderline all-pro season last year and is only going to continue getting better. Matt Filer at left guard, who hopefully at some point will be playing right tackle. We'll see how that goes. Corey Linsley at center, another All-Pro caliber player.
Mm-hmm. 2 Pro
Zion
Bowls.
Johnson, whom I loved in the draft process. He was the only offensive lineman I was open to taking at 17. Very glad they got him. He should really hold down the fort at right guard. And if any line shuffling is required, I could easily see them moving him to left guard, just depending on how things go at right tackle. Not thrilled with the plan at right tackle at all. Not thrilled with Trey Pipkins. Not thrilled with the lack of real competition for him. Would have liked to see some kind of a veteran brought in as a fallback plan at the very least, if not as a sure starter. So we'll see what happens with Pipkins and Norton. I mean, I think we know what's going to happen with Pipkins and Norton. Pipkins is going to win that job unless he's just absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
And then, they actually have some solid depth for the first time in a long time. Signing Will Clapp to back up at guard and center. Developing Brendan Hymas, a guy who was primarily listed as a guard on the roster last year, now listed as a guard and tackle this year. Jamari Salyer, who was a guy who I thought would be a second or third round pick. Getting him in the 6th round was a huge steal.
Mm-hmm.
A guy who has, I think, an opportunity to maybe grow into a starting guard in the NFL, if not be a very, very good backup player. So this is a group that I think is pretty well set. They have some good depth, and we're just going to have to wait and see what happens with Pipkins at right tackle.
Yeah. Anybody else you think could work their way in there?
I don't think either the UDFAs are likely to work their way in there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Johnson, Filer, Hymas.
Yeah, I mean, they kept 9 last year. So Slater, Filer, Linsley, Johnson, Pipkins, Hymas, Salyer, Norton, Will Clapp. That's 9.
Yep.
Outside of that, it's pretty much locked down. Yeah. But I agree with you. I mean, yeah, we'll see. It's going to be Storm Norton and Trey Pipkins to battle it out at right tackle. Hopefully the Chargers do try Matt Filer out at right tackle in camp 2. Hymas is back after a promising camp of preseason last year. They drafted Jamari Salyer, who as guard depth, and Jamie and I absolutely love that pick. Is my favorite day 3 pick, and a guy that I think we both had 3rd round grades on, if I'm not mistaken. Got a steal with Salyer, and then Will Clapp, a veteran who will be in the mix on the interior too. The Chargers brought in Foster Sorrell, who was a UDFA tackle for the Ravens. He's stuck there on the practice squad for most of last year. So did interior lineman Ryan Hunter. Zach Bailey, kind of a journeyman, rookie free agent with the Buccaneers, Vikings, Colts, now with the Chargers, he's going to be in the mix, I guess, for a backup tackle spot in training camp. And then the 2 UDFA O linemen were just kind of whatever to me. Trainer was a 3-year starter left tackle at William and Mary, excuse me. He's massive. He's 6'7", 315. He's the leader of a pretty successful William and Mary O line. And then the other is Isaac Weaver, who's versatile. He played all 5 spots at Old Dominion, had the most of his starts at center, good frame and power, a poor athlete for the position. But like I mentioned, the 9 are pretty much locked in. They kept 9 last year. Slater, Filer, Linsley, Johnson, Pipkins, Hymas, Salyer, Norton, and Clapp. There's your 9. Unless an injury happens, that's pretty much locked in right now going into camp today.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be tough for any of those UDFAs or guys from the practice squad last year to find their way on the roster unless somebody gets hurt or, Norton just completely collapses in camp and they feel like they need to bring somebody up. I think those spots are pretty well spoken for.
Yeah. So a lot of people talking about Pipkins. Junior says, if Pipkins goes to the Pro Bowl, we want to see you guys chug a 40. And Jamie won't do it because he doesn't drink beer. But
Jamie is allergic to beer, so Jamie won't be drinking beer. But I'll find
not 40 ounces, not a 40 of it. And then they want to know Warren wants a Pipkins apology podcast, a la the Herbert apology podcast that we did because we were wrong about Herbert during the draft process. Do we owe Pipkins an apology if he is good?
Define good.
Yeah, well,
because Herbert was like record-setting good.
He's the savior. What do you mean? He's about to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Yeah, that's otherworldly. We couldn't be more wrong about that one. So
is this like we apologize if Pipkin shows he has a pulse?
No.
We apologize if
he's a top half right tackle in the NFL. If he's a top, 15 right tackle, do we owe him an apology? He's above average.
Above average?
Yes.
For a full season?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. All right. There you go, Warren. We will apologize.
He's got to earn it, though.
But it's his fourth year too, though. Like when do you just kind of finally he came around? That's great for him. Give him a big pat on the back and, re-sign him for a short-term deal or however good he is, whatever it is. Then creating an entire podcast dedicated to how Pipkins was good his fourth season. That doesn't have the same pizzazz as the other ones.
Yeah. Not the same impact as what Herbert did.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So there was a question back at the wide receivers that we got from Sal while we were doing the offensive linemen. What's the outlook for the upcoming season with Mike Williams? Is he going to be better than previous seasons, or do we know what to expect? I would say we know what to expect, and we probably will get about the same. How about you? Do you think it's better this year?
I don't think it'll be better this year. I think he benefited from playing a new role that teams were not prepared for him to be in early in the year when he put up a lot of those big numbers.
No help from a wide receiver 3.
No help from a wide receiver 3. He kind of tapered off middle of the year, and then he kind of peaked again at the end of the year. I think, his average season going into last year was something along the lines of like 45 catches for 700 yards and 7 touchdowns or something like that. I think that's probably a little bit better than that, but probably not what we saw last season unless they have more wrinkles to throw out to help catch defenses off guard, because it just seemed like the better defenses adjusted to him midway through the season.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we've got a bunch here questions, and then we'll get out of here. Off topic from Junius. This is a hot topic though. In the past week, will Rivers get into the Hall of Fame before 2030? When is he eligible?
He officially retired last year, right?
Yeah.
So it's a 5-year wait. So
okay.
2026, 2027.
Okay. So will he get in the first 4 years of being eligible? I say yes. What about you?
I think he should, but I'm going to say no.
Okay. All right. Also want to know the next time we're doing a player interview soon. Looking for it soon, hopefully. Got things in the work, and that's about it. So guys, August 7th, we're going to be at training camp. So come and join us. If you guys are available, there's still tickets available, so you guys can go to that. And then also we're going to have a little meetup afterwards, after practice at, what was the name of it, Jamie? Original Pizza Sports Bar and Grill.
Yep.
We'll be there after practice. We'll probably send out details and all that coming up, but go get your tickets to training camp. We'll be there, and we're just going to have some fun. So come and join us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the podcast. And Junius will be there on the 7th. Thank you. Appreciate it. And anybody else, come and join us. We'll probably have some stuff to give out to you, but basically we're just going to hang and we're going to have some fun. So come and join us. And thanks so much for watching the podcast. The audio will be up tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you guys joining us.
Thanks, everybody.